Well, Ollie, I was wrong, and I have never been more happy to have been wrong because I really did think that Doug was going to be the winner of the season. And I know you also thought that Tanuke was going to be the winner of the season.
Yep.
Two very powerful players in Survivor UK, this season of it, that these past two episodes, 11 and 12, were really shocking. And I'm very happy that the episodes leading up to this, that this was the I'm sad to see both of them go. I'm sad to see Doug and Tanuke go. But oh wow, what an amazing couple of episodes.
Yeah, like this weekend, it's safe to say my jaw was on the floor. And also shout out to Survivor UK because I think I texted you and Randy this. Well, I think I texted both of you this. This weekend was the first like proper time that I had seen Survivor UK like even like trending in like the top part of Twitter.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Like it was trending. Everyone was talking about it. There were so many people, and I'm in agreement that the ones that stayed, that kept being loyal to it, here is our payoff, because these two episodes were the payoff. But yeah, sadly, me and you now have more. We have our new winner picks. We can pick more people to root for now instead of Doug and Tanuke.
Do you have your new winner pick? Because I'm still trying to make sense of the edit that everyone's getting. And I think what it comes down to is what the jury is going to value most in the players' games, whoever makes it there. So that's what I'm really curious to discuss with you today.
I was going to say, I don't have a winner pick per se. I have someone I am absolutely rooting for, but I will see in these like next week's episodes how I feel, if there's any winner picks. But yeah, I think right now, to be fair, looking at the four members we have so far, we have got three people that are really good strategists of the game. Like three of them are arguably some of the best strategists that we've seen on Survivor UK, obviously. So I feel like this jury's gonna make sure that the best win at the end. I have faith in them.
We'll see. We'll see, because there's an argument to be made that if someone was playing a great game but was getting on people's nerves, I can think of one person that comes to mind who was targeted heavily these past two episodes. I'll just say it, like, can we see Chris winning at the end based on reactions, right? I think he had a large part in he initiated the strategy of episode 12 when we get there, at least what we saw in the episodes. But are people going to hold that against him if he makes it all the way to the end? And I know, Ollie, we can't tell if it's going to be a final three or a final two. It keeps switching.
No, you know now? So yes. So I know that they've posted the official things on BBC iPlayer, and I believe it's a final three.
Okay.
I believe it's a final three. Anyone else that also knows, please confirm, but I do believe it is a final three.
And our live chat is open. So if you do know the answer to this, please join. Let us know what it is. We have Georgette in the live chat who says their new winner pick is Matthew. Oh, we're going to talk a lot about Matthew today. I think we should, because I'm not sure it's fully there for Matthew. He's playing with a lot of emotion, but what an incredible story these two episodes were able to tell, almost like framed from his perspectives. I looked forward to every one of his confessionals, because a lot of the votes, especially the one in episode 12, had a lot to do with Matthew.
Yeah, I was going to say episode 12 was a very much a kind of Matthew's decision in a way, and I know we will get to it, but yeah, he's definitely shown himself more. We'll say that, like in these last couple of episodes, he's definitely shown himself out there, and he's almost, dare I say, moving forward, potentially put himself in the same position that Doug and Tanuke had, but we have to wait and see.
Oh, interesting. I'm curious to dissect more about that, but we have to start with episode 11, which starts out as everybody hates Chris, because it is just everyone wakes up and they're like, okay, Chris is going home. I think tribal council's the next day. Like, Chris is going home next. And that's what everyone seems to be pretty much aligned on. Chris knows it.
Yeah.
Tanuke sort of outlines that the Calatonians, they keep switching between Calatonians and Calatins, or but you know, we'll try to either way, the players who were originally on Calaton outnumber the original players who were a part of Lenena. So we have Tanuke, Maddie, Nathan, Leilani, and Lawrence, who were the original Calatons. And we have Hannah, Peg, Doug, and Chris, who were the original Lenenas. And it seems like Tanuke is like, I guess we just keep picking off the Lenenans because we have the majority, and fair plan.
Yeah, and that was a really smart read on Tanuke because she clocked that right now there was Hannah, Doug, and Pegleg that were on one side, and Chris was all the way over here. So she knew no matter what, it was always going to be a 3-1. So she was like, well, if I can at least get, all the Calatons together, why not? And I don't see why that isn't a bad move on her, because the hold that she had on that group is really good. Even some people like Lawrence that, to me, I would like Lawrence was a massive wild card and kind of almost should have known he was on the bottom. So to still for Tanuke to still kind of have some influence with him and be able to have some bond with him, credit to her game. There was one thing I wanted to mention though, because you were talking about Chris. And I thought it was very interesting. Him and Leilani were having a conversation in the hut shelter. And Chris was kind of talking about the contradictions, which I did actually kind of agree with. He was talking about how people will lie to his face, but if he does it, it's snaky. And I kind of do get that. But also it's one of those, I get it, but in the same breath, I'm like, you have also shown your snaky side. But I thought it was a really interesting conversation because when I was watching it, I saw both sides of the coin. I saw why he had merit to it, but also like, yeah, but you were the snake, so there is a reason people aren't going to trust you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. He's correct. There's always that one person every season, one or two people, where the players seem to automatically call them out for being the sneakiest or being the most strategic or being the most threatening to win, in like a negative way. Like, oh, they're not playing the game with morality or whatever. Yeah. Integrity, thank you. And it is a double standard because literally everyone kind of should be playing the game like that. We're at the point where we should have been many episodes ago, where like you need to look out for your own game. I agree with you. Chris's mistake, in my opinion, is that he really made it obvious the type of game that he was playing. Plus, it didn't help the whole Lee being voted out situation and what came from that. I just keep thinking about him trying to throw the challenge with those goggles on his face, it's so much of a showman that it's kind of like, all right, you're going to have some attention steered towards you.
Well, I don't know whether you were here when I spoke about this. His strategy to me is he's got a performative strategy. He plays a very performative strategic game, whereas I feel like we've seen Doug play, and Doug is the perfect person I reference for this, has played a very subtle game. And it's very much, Chris is happy to be the performer and be the front person, whereas Doug has no issues being kind of that background character and being like, I'm gonna play my strategy from over here, guys. It's fine.
Apparently not subtle enough, though, because things don't turn out great for Doug. But we'll talk all about why things unfolded the way they did. It really comes down to amazing strategy on Tanuke's part. And we see Chris talk to Matt. This is sort of where this is the first clue that we get to Chris's plan with kind of reeling in Matthew. And he starts talking to him about like how he feels like Pegleg is targeting him, which true. Everyone was during this segment was under the notion that Chris would be the next to go. And Maddie sort of explains also like, I just wanted you to play your idol. That's the reason I voted for you. Idols are dangerous. And I think, good on Matthew for sort of telling Chris the truth here. And just also Matt was upfront about how like people just wanted to separate Chris from Ashley. Power duos in the game are very dangerous, especially when the numbers start to dwindle. So it makes sense. But Chris also says that he doesn't really trust Doug and Matthew anymore.
Yeah, he made a reference saying there's a difference between liking someone and trusting someone, which I think is the correct notion for Survivor anyway. There is definitely difference between liking someone and trusting someone. And definitely with this season, we're seeing that, you know, Survivor UK is rebooting, and you can definitely see that there is that difference between people liking someone and actually being able to work with them. And I think in that conversation as well, they mentioned Pegleg's stubbornness, which I think has been a very big hindrance for Pegleg, because straight away, as soon as we saw him merge, I do feel like Pegleg does have his kind of like, not opinions, but he has his thoughts and he sticks to them, and there's no wavering. I do sometimes see a lack of adaptability from Pegleg, which I think could hurt him. But obviously, episode 12, that did kind of help him a little bit. But it's moving on that I'm gonna be wondering there.
I mean, I think Pegleg and Hannah actually have very similar problems when it comes to being able to adapt to the game where they are in the game. And we see players really pull ahead of them this episode. And I would say Maddie to some extent. Maddie was able to like find that middle ground. But with Pegleg and Hannah especially, I feel like these 2 episodes are great episodes for players who want to play Survivor to look at the perspective of Hannah and Pegleg in these 2 episodes, and Matthew, because I think it sort of serves as a good reminder of sort of like the situations you might find yourself in where you feel like everyone is so secure on a plan, that everyone is so in agreement, but then you see that that is not always the case. And I think by watching the journey of Pegleg, Hannah, and Matthew in these 2 episodes, it'll give future players a really good idea of like, okay, just because I think things are going to be very simple doesn't always mean they are.
Yeah. Sometimes feeling like it's so simple is when you need to realize that it's not. Because if you are led into a false sense of security and simplicity, there is clearly a facade. There is a curtain that is clearly being placed in front of you, which it does seem like, I feel like we'll talk about it in episode 12 more. I feel like that's where the curtain kind of comes down a bit. But yeah, definitely this episode, these 2 episodes we do see, I feel like especially with Hannah, we kind of see Hannah's almost realization more so in episode 12, but not this episode, but definitely this episode with Matthew. We see him definitely step up a bit more. And I feel like the him and Christopher conversation was the start of, I want to say not the start of his social game, but the start of showcasing the strength of Matthew's social game. Because I feel like Matthew has been good with everyone. Because I actually feel like him and Christopher have had something going on for a while. Because I think it was last episode, Matthew didn't really want to get rid of Christopher. He'd rather he did want to go for Ashley because he felt more of a connection with Christopher. And then again, it was like during the leave out off, it seemed to be Matthew was the person that they wanted to go for, feeling like they could get his vote. So that's why I'm kind of interested to see. Matthew's always been someone that people feel like they can get a vote from.
You know what's funny is that I saw, well, we'll get there, but I saw Matthew's actions overall this episode actually more of a con for his game, because a lot of it had to do with being influenced by others in order to actually make a move in the first place. And that is a very tough place to argue from at Final 3. Not impossible, but it is a very tough place to sort of stand your ground once someone points out that you were just following a plan that they came up with. But something else you mentioned, sort of some sort of simplicity to plans, something else that I thought was very simple, but I guess not. We'll talk about it, was the reward challenge. And this was where they all had to memorize a sequence of items, run back to their station. They played 1v1, and then whoever got the items in the correct order wins a point for their team. And they win. Oh, yes.
Shut Your Trap.
Actually, that's a great name.
It's as soon as I saw it, because it's been on Survivor US. I know for a fact
Right.
they done it on One World, and I remember seeing it. And yeah, shut your trap.
Oh, it's excellent.
Yes.
And I loved the reward for this challenge was a trip to the Survivor Chippy, which was lovely. You get fish and chips and battered sausages and fizzy drinks. I like this a lot.
I
I think that's the
love me about it.
perfect thing to have as a
So
reward.
British. I mean, as soon as he said battered sausage, I feel like everyone in the UK was like, "Yeah, we'll have that one."
And just also the fact that they will be enjoying the reward on a beach, which is very
Yes.
appropriate for fish and chips. Like, love it. We had team captains. We had Chris, whose team consisted of himself, Tanuke, Maddie, and Doug. And we had Lawrence's team, who consisted of Lawrence, Leilani, Nathan, and Hannah. Pegleg was not picked, but he still was able to participate by choosing the team he thinks is going to win the challenge. And if that team does in fact win, he would be included along on the reward as well. I like when they do this. It's nice.
Yeah, it does make it fair, because at least it's like you can't play, but here's your chance to at least win it.
When we rewatched Cambodia and like some of the players who, when we got to a certain point and they separated into teams and one player wouldn't participate in the reward challenge, but they weren't able to select the team at all, I felt terrible. So I'm so happy this change has been implemented in the game of Survivor overall. Were there any rounds or any matchups that were noteworthy to you?
Not necessarily. I think the one thing that I did find funny was it was when Matthew went and he got the pineapple wrong.
Oh, I know.
And I only say this because I found it really funny, because his hat is reversible, his bucket hat, because it's banana. The only reason I know this is because I currently work in retail, and I work at a retail store. I work at a very well-known chain. That is the hat that we sold, because I remember it, because there's bananas on one side and pineapples on the other. Every time I looked at it, I was like, I know where that's from. And I feel like it was just funny because he like did the pineapple, and I was like, he was probably looking up trying to figure out what it was, and he just saw the pineapple and was like, that's it.
I don't know what happened there, but obviously easier said than done. I think a lot of people were very successful at this challenge overall.
Yeah.
But I know that round, Matthew versus Lawrence, they also, both of them forgot to like get into the box, which is how they would signify that they were finished with the challenge. And their teams were like, get in. Like it was funny. I never want to be that person if I were to participate.
I will say, I felt like they didn't really have a lot of items. I feel like they could have given. I felt like they like 5. I was like, that's a fine starting point. And I was waiting for like the 6 and the 7s, and it was 4, and I was like, go on, give them 6 and 7.
They probably wanted to like finish the challenge really quick.
Yeah, probably.
The fish and chips were getting cold. They were like, we just need to get this going. But it turns out that Team Christopher wins reward, and Pegleg joins them because he chooses that team as the winners, and he wins along with them. And we get some strategy talk at the reward challenge. It's Christopher trying to work his magic, but I don't think people really want to listen.
I was gonna say
you made me instantly want to order in.
No, all right. It's a Wednesday. It was Christopher wanting to clear the air, and you obviously had this is the thing. Again, this is credit to Tanuke and Doug, because they were very good at just basically being like, yeah, absolutely, like pondering to like listening to what he was saying, and basically like, no, we're gonna let you think we're fine with it. But it was also one part of the chippy I really didn't appreciate, and we had just talked about this on our 45 recap. The close-up shots and stuff I thought were really good on 45. For this one, where I'm just basically seeing them go, oh, I was like, I didn't need to see that close up. I was like, where they're literally like, I was like, no, I didn't. I really didn't need to see a close up of everyone.
I must have been typing or something, because I completely missed that, but I believe you that it happened.
No, they literally had they were literally so close. Like Christopher was like here, and it was like home, and I was like, I don't need to see it. I don't need to see the food going down the esophagus. I'm so sorry.
I think I don't blame them though for how they approach that. If you're not going to enjoy your reward when you get it, like you gotta stockpile once it's there. Let's see. We have a couple of comments in the chat. IS says this week has been the best of the season. The game busted wide open. I completely agree. There's no doubt about that in my mind. And Ollie, I know you feel the same. Also from IS, Tanuke's confessional as Christopher is making peace was hilarious. It was.
It was. Oh, it was so funny. It's how I would have reacted, to be fair. What Tanuke said, I was like, yep.
Was this also the moment that Tanuke said that thing about, yes, Chris is going to have to go soon, but not tonight? Yes. I was like, it was something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, but I loved that. That's when I was like, oh, we're about to play the game. And I was so like, happy about it.
I was like, mother is mothering. Like, this was the moment. This was the moment she was going to be doing her queen. And I was like, yep, here for it.
And then it was so exciting to see how this all unfolded. We had Tanuke approaching Nathan first and was like, hey, so what if we voted Doug out and tell everyone that we're voting Chris? And everyone who she approaches seems to like quickly agree to this plan. And she says the goal is to get all the Calotons to the end, or as close to the end as they all can. And this was really fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean, because I feel like we started off with it was Hannah and Pegleg, or as I put them in my notes, Lee's hitmen. They seem to very much have their blinders on. I feel like these two episodes as well, actually, that I feel like the biggest flaw of people was the blinders sort of came on for a lot of people. But those two definitely, we started off with them two having their blinders on only Christopher. And I feel like that's where Tanuke was able to capitalize, because not just them two, Doug as well, they all just had, they were like this, like, yep, Christopher, we're going for Christopher. And Tanuke was like, okay, well, while you're looking that way, I'm just going to go do this. And I thought it was so smart of Tanuke to do it, because I think this was where she was mentioning that she wanted to tell Lawrence last minute. She wanted to make sure she had her core four knowing, and then tell Christopher, because it seems as though letting Lawrence know, sorry, because it seems like Lawrence isn't not the most trustworthy, but he isn't able to keep as many secrets as possible. And we've seen that, and I can understand why she did it.
Especially after episode 12. Yeah, absolutely. I was very impressed and also just very happy to see, like, not only did Tanuke formulate the plan, get it in motion, but also identified who she had to tell at what moments. And it was great to sort of see her awareness of the social aspect of the game and the players around her to know, like, if I bring in certain people at the wrong time, this will all go up in smoke.
Yeah. And it is such a testament to not just how strong of a player she is, but how strong of a social player she is, because she's been able to look at the entire group and go, these are the people I need to tell. I need to tell these people first. Then, so basically, I know that she wanted to tell Nathan and Matty first. They were the first who she was telling. Then she had to get Leilani involved. And then she was going to make sure Lawrence knew last minute, which I think is so, to me, that's like a notch above like normal social players. Like the fact that you're able to pinpoint when people need to know, I'm like, well done. Because we see so many times it's like, we know the group we need to do, so we just tell everyone. But then add in the thing of, I know when to tell them, I'm like, yeah, that's good. Well done. Because sometimes I don't even think of that.
And this is a huge risk. Like you just said, it's a huge risk, especially before an immunity challenge, to bring a plan like this to so many people. So it was amazing that Tanuke took the swing here to say, all right, let me try to get the ball rolling on this plan. I think what it also does, though, is build trust with the people around her that, they thought, especially the people who she approached first about the plan, that they build some more trust with Tanuke. And I think we do have to talk about, Ollie, knowing what happens at the end of episode 12. was this the right time to make a move like this? I keep going back and
Yeah.
forth. I really
I
do.
yeah, I was back and forth, but I actually think it was the best time for them. Like truly I do, because at the end of the day, you had you had Doug, Pegleg, and Hannah anyway, who here's the thing, and this is where we go back to what Lee was when Lee was allowed somehow to talk from the jury, and he mentions the hitmen. We all know the three people he was talking about: Pegleg, Doug, and Hannah. They're already going to be tied together. So you then have Christopher. Christopher is just one person. Whereas those three, if we keep them, we know that Pegleg is going to always be close to Doug. We know that Hannah is always going to be close to Pegleg and Doug. So why have those three? Because that would always be a free solid vote. And if that 5 wanted to crack, there would be these 3 strong people going, well, we only need to grab 2 other people to gain, or 1 other person to gain a majority. So I do think it was the smartest move, because as well, Doug was a threat. And I think that was the perfect time because no one saw it coming. So I do feel like it was the right time.
I mean, listen, Ollie, you know me and these past couple of episodes that we've recapped. I've always said if Doug makes it to the end, he's winning. And I still believe that if Doug were to make it to the end, that he would win the game just based on that mix of strategy and also his social game.
Yep.
3 people threw an immunity challenge so that he could have the necklace just because he asked. So I think that's proof enough of how highly the other players saw Doug.
Yep.
And I just, quick reminder, Ollie, what was Chris's original tribe?
What Chris was Lenena.
He was Lenena.
Yeah,
that's where I go back and forth with this plan to put Doug before Chris, because yes, Chris was a great distraction. And we can talk more about this after the immunity challenge. Chris was a great distraction in order to take the shot at Doug. But by getting rid of Chris, you still weaken Lenena's numbers. And I heard what you said, Ollie, too. So I'm going back and forth on this because, as we know, this big of a move really, unfortunately, was the beginning of the end for Tanuke.
No, I can't. Yeah, I can kind of get that. I feel like there was other factors that went into it other than just it was the big move. Because I do feel like I will die on that hill. I do think it was the right move at that time because there was the numbers. So yeah.
And it didn't take much to get people to do it.
Yeah.
There wasn't a big push, at least from what we saw in the episode. It wasn't a huge push that Tanuke had to do in order to make this happen. So, you know, to that point as well, it was the right timing and everyone made it happen. And it was amazing. But, you know, we'll see how it plays out. And I wonder if this is just going to turn into the next person to make a big move is the next person to go. IS in the chat says, Tanuke's plan made the immunity challenge so exciting. I completely agree. Let's get into it. Ollie, it's your favorite challenge. Would you like to cue it up?
Oh, it's called Get a Grip. And basically, it's the challenge where everyone is on a pole and they've got to hold on for dear life. And if they've had enough, they'll drop down. This had the because I know that we've spoken about, because it just was done in 45,
right?
And they were really narrow.
They had the indents.
Yeah, they had the indents. And I thought what was I really enjoyed about this one was the indents got smaller.
Yeah.
I really loved that.
I liked it too.
Yeah, it made it so much more interesting. But again, it's another classic Survivor challenge, which this is what I am actually loving now, that they are bringing the classic challenges back, because not only is it nostalgia for obviously any of the original Survivor fans, but the new people can see these challenges and actually realize how cool Survivor is and what the challenges are. But yeah, you know me, I just love this challenge.
Right. We've talked about this challenge so many times because this is not one that I would like to do, the US version of, because what I liked about this version of it, which I would absolutely do, is the fact that at certain intervals, they're told to move to the next notch. And then you're getting closer and closer to the ground as the indent is getting less and less. And I thought that was so smart. Yeah. And I felt like for me, You know, it's funny. We were talking about like certain fears that we have, and I'm not normally afraid of heights, but for some reason, being wrapped around that telephone pole kind of makes me feel gross. So like it would really scare me. So something about at regular intervals moving closer to the ground, I really enjoyed that twist to
Yeah.
the challenge. The out order, Hannah drops first, then Doug, Christopher, Matthew, Leilani, Nathan, Pegleg, Lawrence, and that leaves Tanuke, who wins immunity.
I was so happy.
This was so
Also,
fun.
props to Pegleg, because the thing is, he's only that the one leg being able to do that. I was really impressed by it, because obviously the good thing that everyone else has is they're able to at least move their feet in some way to get a better position. That foot is how it is. So I was really impressed that he managed to last until third, especially with, to me, that there's a slight disadvantage not being able to kind of move that solid foot.
I really enjoyed that they included in the edit Pegleg's description of what he was feeling during that entire challenge. It was great to watch, and I just thought this was one of my favorite challenges this season overall to watch.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about, I feel like the beginning part of this season, the pre-merge part especially, what the challenges were sort of lacking to me. There weren't any that, you know, there was no giant team obstacle course any bigger than the one that they did. There wasn't the water one. So to see this classic challenge, which is small in scale and very simple, but just something we all know and love and it's familiar to us, was very special to see.
Yeah.
Tanuke wins. It's so great. Like I agree with IS and I agree with you. Like it was based on the plan that was happening. I was nervous because you know, Ollie, like all of us here know that when a plan is announced before the immunity challenge, there is a very high likelihood that the target of that plan is going to win immunity. And for a second, I thought Doug was struggling from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I thought like, is he gonna somehow pull through? But no. And
no.
Things start picking up from here.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. Like, I was worried, but then Doug was uncomfortable for the entire thing. And the one thing I know about that challenge is if you can't get into a mind space, which Tanuke would, and Leilani, actually, I'll give both of them credit. When they were able to get into that mind space, I was like, there is no way it's not one of them two winning. Also, I did find it funny. I don't know whether it was when Doug fell off or when Christopher fell off. They did a camera shot to both Nathan and T nodding at each other, and I just thought that was really funny. They were both there just like...
Oh, that's great. That's so great. Oh, I mean, like, it was well earned. Tanuke did an amazing job, and we get back to camp, and we just reinforce the idea that the original Calaton members are going to vote for Doug at this tribal council. And like, and I think we forgot to mention, like, Chris tries some other stuff before we got to the immunity challenge in the episode. Chris tried talking to Leilani. The plan was to try to like regroup with some of the players who he sees as being on the outs of the now majority alliance. Chris has identified that there is there is the Calaton majority to Lenena. And so he's really trying to make something happen, but he is just unable to convince anyone.
No. Well, what I found really funny, like in episode 11, was we saw a lot of Christopher and Leilani conversations.
That's true.
Because they were talking on the bed. They were talking when they went to the water thing and Leilani was washing her hair. I think they spoke again a little bit after the immunity. I can't remember. But then I found it really strange when Christopher wanted to go for Leilani, purely because she was apparently acting like she wasn't playing.
Yeah, can we pause there? Because I am so confused. I think I missed this. Or let me just see my notes real quick, because I feel like I missed Chris's like, I'm gonna vote for Leilani edit, because it caught me by surprise when he voted for her at tribal council. So I don't know where that came from. I'm wondering if it was just because he couldn't get the numbers and he was feeling some sort of way about it. Like, I don't know, but it was a very odd decision in my opinion.
Because for me, if he wanted to try and get people together or like get a consensus that wasn't him, the smartest choice would have been Lawrence. because Lawrence was at the bottom of Calaton, and if he wanted to get like Lenena on board, along with like the Calatons, to be like, let's just be like civil, let's go for this wild card, Lawrence. So when it was Leilani, I was like, well, you know for a fact you're not going to get T, Nathan, and Matthew. I was like, you could possibly get Lawrence, but you haven't really spoken to him, so I don't see it. But it was unfortunate because at the end of the day, like, I think it was Hannah, we saw a confessional from her, and they seemed too set on the Christopher plan. But what I also found funny on Christopher's part was, obviously he'd been talking about trusting and liking, there's the difference. He kept mentioning, even during the pre-tribal part, that he didn't really trust Doug, but then was still trying to work with him. And I was sat there going, I was like,
I'm wondering if it's one of those things where he saw Doug as someone who was so ingrained in the plans of everyone else, or everyone liked him. Like, I wonder if it was that type of thing where it's like, maybe if I invested some extra time in trying to formulate a relationship with Doug, maybe that would put me at a really great position after this tribal council ends. And Christopher's strategy confused me during this sort of scramble. I can understand why, because like he thinks he's about to go home. So you're kind of going for anything there. I didn't like the idea of pretending there was an idol, especially because he had an extra vote that would have been better to leverage anyway. I just don't think he had anyone he could have told about the extra vote, because it would have pinched their target.
I mean, again, I'm just going with the whole performative strategy when it came to the idol. It was just, let's see what I can do performative wise. But again, it was that thing of, he showed it to Leilani. He told Leilani, the person he was voting for. I was like, what?
Wait, did he tell her about the extra vote or
the idol? The idol.
Okay,
yeah. Because it was obviously Doug went and exposed it. Doug was like, just so everyone knows, Christopher's going over there. He's going to come back and pretend that there's an idol to try and shock us all. And he went and told Leilani, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, I don't know. But it didn't matter, because we go to tribal council and Tanuke's plan comes through fruition. And I think it was also funny. Leilani said something during one of the questions where Leilani said, the game has started. And I was like, the game started 11 episodes ago.
I put it on my notes, Leilani, sorry, but the game started 24 days ago. Yeah. That is the only part I was like, because I feel like I can understand why people have said it, because I know that someone else said it in a previous thing, and I clocked it, and I was like, no, the game started.
I didn't clock that one.
No, I know it was a few episodes ago. It's somewhere on my notes. But yeah, I was sat there like, you.
Because we're at the final 8 right now, right? Doug was voted out the final 8. We've been playing the game.
That comment from IS, yes.
There you go.
Yes. If you've not watched Marquesas, you won't get it. But yes.
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
it's giving that. Yeah, I get what you mean.
Okay.
It's almost like it takes a big thing to suddenly play the game. But yes, that actually makes a lot of sense.
It's playing the reactive game, right? Not playing the active is not the right word, but not being proactive in your strategy, like we've seen Tanuke do this episode. But I think and I don't think a reactive game is incorrect. That's where I would classify Leilani's game at this point, as more reactive than proactive. And again, that's not always a bad thing. So Christopher uses his advantage here. He puts 2 votes on Leilani, and then it ends up being 5 votes on Doug and 3 votes on Christopher.
Which again, Christopher was doing his panto stuff. I was loving that.
There's a performative thing. I think he did it a lot more during the tribal that he did. He played his idol at.
Yes.
But yes, I wonder how people will react to sort of those more performative outbursts that Christopher has been doing. He might want to stop that now. He might want to stop that just in case if he makes it to the end, it might make people not vote for him. Why don't we take a very quick break, and then we have a whole nother episode to talk about, and we'll be right back.
My name is Jonah Fielko, and I'm the CEO of Bracketology.tv, fantasy sports for reality television. We offer fantasy games for shows like The Bachelor, Survivor, Big Brother, RuPaul's Drag Race, and counting. You start by creating a community. Within your community, you can create a fantasy league for each show that you want to play fantasy games for. Within the league, you can choose up to 3 of our 4 game types, and our most popular is the Advanced League. Choose a team of contestants, and depending on what they do and say during the episode, that's how your team will gain or lose points each week. We also have elimination-style games like our Confidence Pool. This is where you choose how confident you are that each contestant will survive elimination that week. And we've also got March Madness-style brackets. Come back a couple hours after the episode to check your scores and watch you climb the leaderboard. Bracketology is free to play, so grab your friends, your family, your coworkers, and head to bracketology.tv for more info.
All right, here we go. Next episode. This is episode 12 of Survivor UK. Thank you for sticking with us. As always, our live chat is open. If you would like to chime in on these amazing 2 episodes, we definitely want to hear your thoughts. So we start with the aftermath of Doug's blindside, which, by the way, we didn't say before, but Doug's reaction to the blindside was also so much fun to watch as well. It's fun seeing the players enjoying the game. And I know it must not feel good, but to just see like the excitement of it all, it made me happy to see. Like Tanuke says basically, all right, now it's time for Christopher to go.
It was the quote she put. I feel like she said this though. It was, "Honey Boo Boo, you next." I was like, yes.
It was a great quote. And here's what I will say about this. Tanuke did not need Christopher's vote to pull the move on Doug. And that again makes me think that the order, it might have benefited Tanuke more if the order had switched. She didn't need Christopher's vote to begin with in order to get Doug out. And now Christopher is still in the game, who is someone who doesn't think he's working with Tanuke, really. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I wonder what would have been more beneficial, but shoulda, coulda, woulda.
I mean, I feel like this was, at the start of the episode as well, we kind of saw Peg and Hannah's, like, they finally realized basically how their stubbornness had screwed them over. Because, again, had they just not been so dead set, they may have clocked to see something else was going on. But I just feel like they finally realized this at the start of this episode. And we saw it a lot with Hannah, that, you know, their kind of stubbornness and their blinders really did make them lose their closest ally.
I think Pegleg really acknowledged it very well in his confessional, just in terms of like, okay, I wasn't aware that the tribal lines hadn't disappeared completely. And it was great to see that awareness. And we have the scene where Tanuke is apologizing to Hannah for blindsiding Doug. And Hannah feels like she's consistently fallen short in terms of the moves. And I really empathize. You know, like, I think that you kind of expect the game to be played a certain way. I think Hannah is another player that I would put in the like reactive strategy of the game. To be completely honest, in terms of Hannah's strategy, she's shown that she has good reads. Like she had a great read on Ashley, knowing that she really couldn't trust Ashley for the better of her own game. But now we have here Hannah sort of realizing that she hasn't kind of been able to put her thoughts into action or has let the opportunities kind of go past her.
Yes, I think I agree with that one more. I think she hasn't really been able to jump on a lot of opportunities. And part of me feels like she hasn't really been very, like, not really, but I feel like there has been a lack of adaptability with her game. Because it seems like she's been so loyal. And it's like, the thing is, we always knew that Hannah was going to be close to Pegleg, was going to be close to Lee, was going to be close to Ren, was going to be close to Doug. Like she had her people and she kind of wasn't swaying, which I think has kind of hurt her a little bit. Because if I'm not mistaken, I know that she hasn't actually voted in majority, even 50%. Like I know it's under 50%, her like kind of correct vote like percentage has been. But I did sympathize with her because you kind of saw it was she's got this far in the game, and I think it was frustration of almost how the hell have I gotten this far, not having that strong of a game, and then kind of thinking, how am I going to be able to currently plead my case to this jury when all they're going to sit there and be like, what did you do? Because all she can go is, I didn't really vote right, and I got hair. And I feel like that was what she was kind of realizing at that moment. But I still felt like I did feel for her at that moment.
To be honest, I think a lot of us who love the game of Survivor, although we probably say to ourselves like, I could go in there. I know the type of game that I want to play. Until you meet the people that you're playing with and you figure out, or maybe don't figure out where you stand in the tribe dynamic, it could be really difficult to get a good read on what is going on. And I'm sure that Hannah had conversations with people where she did feel like people were on her side for the votes. It's just as the episodes are edited, we see Hannah go into confessionals saying, this is going to happen. Everyone's on board. Almost inferring that no further discussion happened or was needed. So, I think it's interesting. We'll keep talking about Hannah as we keep going on with this episode. We go to the reward challenge, which is another one that I really enjoy. This is where two players work together to be suspended on a board. There are pegs sticking out of it. And when Joel draws a number, one player is responsible for odd numbered pegs and one player is responsible for even number pegs, and they have to pull them out as each one is called.
Do you want to know what the name was?
Please.
Hold Up.
Oh, that's a weak name.
Yeah. But so this was originally Survivor Australia, this challenge.
Right. Yeah.
I really liked it. I thought it was a really cool challenge. I did like the fact that Peg was standing on pegs. Every time I was watching Peg Leg, I was like, pegs on pegs. That was just me being stupid and funny. Peg was on pegs.
Okay.
Peg was standing on pegs. I enjoyed it.
It was essentially Survivor Twister. Yeah, I agree. And I think what a great take on it as well. It was really cool to see. I love this challenge. And like you said, Australian Survivor does it great. The winners of this one win a trip to the Survivor Pizza Parlor. Hopefully it's not frozen pizza, because that would be so cruel to do to the castaways. For those of you who watch Australian Survivor, you may recall that one reward. So this is interesting because something very minor happens here where I think Lawrence pulls the wrong one at one time, and it causes him and Pegleg to get out of the challenge. And I think this comes up again very briefly. I mean, it's probably not even worth talking about it, but after the challenge ends and Christopher and Matthew are the winners of it, they select Lawrence. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think Pegleg has a discussion with someone on the way out being like, he pulls the wrong one and he gets to go on reward.
Yes. To be fair, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Like, I completely agree. Because if I was Pegleg at that moment and they picked Lawrence, there would be part of me that has resentment. And I definitely would kind of sit there and be like, so you just took the person that really royally screwed up. I was like, I just felt like when it came to the picks, because I think it was between Lawrence and Hannah. And I think Christopher really wanted Lawrence. And I was kind of sat there. I was like, well, it's clear why he wants Lawrence. He's like, and we saw what happens at the reward. But I was sat there and I was like, it's Chris. I know there's going to be strategy. There's a reason he's picked Lawrence.
And he gets what he wants because he does. I mean, he does a good job of being like, it's either going to be, I think you're right. I think it was between Hannah and Lawrence. And luckily Matthew didn't really have that strong of feelings towards whoever came. So they were able to select Lawrence, and you're right, Christopher wants to build a new alliance by pulling them in. This really sets the groundwork for what I am going to call as Christopher's move for the rest of the episode, because until this conversation happened, Christopher was 118% going home. But this really was, he put in the work to solidify his spot in the game. So he really like lays it on them, especially towards Matthew, where it basically outlines that there is still a divide between the tribes, and that Matthew and Lawrence are sort of on the outer of the majority alliance, and they need to do something about it if they want to make it to the end. Is he wrong?
Yeah. This is the thing. Like, I do feel like Christopher has had some really decent observations. I mean, we saw it last episode where he did clock the Calaton majority. It was when he was calling out Matthew, going, "I'm happy to be here and fighting to be here. I don't feel like you're fighting." And we kind of saw that exchange. It didn't get heated, but you could tell that tones were there. And it was almost like, and it was almost like he was just throwing Hail Marys and seeing what sticks. I feel like the only thing that his reads were wrong was saying that Matthew and Lawrence were both at the bottom, because we know that Matthew isn't. Like, Matthew was he was in a decent position.
Okay, but sure. But if you can get Matthew to believe that he's
that's
that
what
is just as powerful.
I was going to say, the one thing that Christopher did do well was he was able to manipulate the perceptions, which I think is what the credit that he gets for. He was able to manipulate Matthew's own perception and kind of make him think that he really was on the outs when he wasn't. But yeah, there were a couple of things this episode when it was like Christopher was like, "Well, I'm fighting to be here, other people aren't," and I was kind of like,
well, to that point, because Matthew says, and I was really annoyed with some of the things that Matthew was saying, because they're on this reward, and I hear Matthew saying the same things over again. Oh, we should just all be grateful to be here. Oh, like we're looking out for the tribe. Like those type of things where I understand why Christopher was like, I am happy to be here. But the difference between you and me right now is that I am very close to going home and you are not. But you're close to being in my position too. And I think that Christopher sort of did have to take this path. I was really impressed by this. I was like,
no, I will clarify. Yeah, I will clarify by saying I think it's later on, not more so this moment. I think I am getting ahead of myself in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, this part I did understand the strategic parts of why he was doing it, because again, Christopher is in survival mode. Like,
and I think he knows that Matthew has a lot of empathy, like a lot of empathy that kind of holds back Matthew's strategy in a sense.
Yes.
What did you think of the cows showing up at Kalena?
Loved it.
I was so confused.
I didn't care. I loved it. It was so
I think that's probably the most wild thing I've ever seen approach a camp. Can anyone think of something else? It was like so out of nowhere.
Yeah. But the thing was, they looked like cattle. They didn't look like cows. They looked like cattle. And I was like,
they were being herded.
Yeah. I was like, oh, what farm's nearby? Oh, I loved it.
That was fantastic. I'm glad that obviously they had to keep that moment. It was so out of left field. I loved it. Hannah feels like she can't trust Tanuke anymore. And this also, the elephant in Gabon.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. But again, something about the cows being herded too, where I was just like, what is going on? So Hannah feels like she can't trust Tanuke anymore. And this is not good for Tanuke, because it's yet another person who is skeptical.
Skeptical. No, you said it right first time.
I said skeptical, like
skeptical.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's another person who might put a vote on Tanuke. And so that's not going great. And Christopher keeps working on Matthew. That's sort of the big game from Christopher right now, is keep working on Matthew.
Yeah, because I think the thing with Matthew is, and I feel like he mentioned it, he was kind of he was feeling like he was in a stalemate dilemma, that no matter what he did, he was going to annoy people. Like he was going to upset it was either going to upset Christopher or he was going to upset Nathan and Tanuke. So I feel like this is where like Christopher did do a really good job at kind of, again, I'm saying it in a strategic way. He was manipulating Matthew.
Yes.
He was preying on his emotions, which I've seen. Matthew is very emotional. He's an emotional player. I think he's been one of the people to kind of struggle the difference. He's been the one kind of struggling liking someone and trusting someone. And I feel like he did do a very not bad job, but he was blurring the lines. And I feel like now, because they've been blurred and he's kind of seeing the divide of, okay, I do love this person, but I have to see the threat in them. I feel like that's where he's now starting to struggle and Christopher's able to gain more advantage on it.
I think what Matthew failed to realize, to your point, is that that's kind of the point of Survivor, which is you are going to turn some people against you or, you know, betray trust to certain extents here and there. And I think what Matthew was not sort of thinking about was, okay, which decision leads me to betraying the least amount of people?
Yes.
Because I think if you can make two people happy but one person upset at you, it's better to have two people left in the game who are happy with you than one person who's upset with you.
Yeah.
And that's what Matthew was really struggling with here. So I mean, again, his story, his journey is very interesting. I do think he is being played at this point.
Yeah.
I want to see if he can sort of climb out of that and start making decisions that benefit his game. And I do wonder if getting rid of Tanuke at the end of this episode, I do wonder if that was.
I will get to that. I do have a thought on it, but we'll get to it.
All right. Perfect. I mean, where should we go next? Because like Matthew and Lawrence, they kind of discuss the pros and cons of flipping on Tanuke. And Matthew says, well, okay, if we do it, then we could have the majority of numbers. And I'm like, okay. Lawrence recognizes that there is importance with splitting up Tanuke and Nathan, but he still wants to preserve their friendship. Now, Lawrence is playing with fire here.
Yes. I mean, there's a part we'll talk about later on in the episode where I do feel like we saw what Lawrence wanted to do, but it didn't help him. Again, it's one of those things in the game. If everyone is a respectable person, they will be able to still be a friend after the game regardless. So when it's the preserving friendship thing, that's where I see like we're starting to see people who have blurred the lines of friendship and game. And when he's saying that, I'm like, at the end of the day, if they blindside you, you can still be their friend. Like, you're all going to be like, you've all been in this experience afterward. Like you're the, sorry, I can't speak. The 18 of you have all done this journey together and only you 18 can kind of have that connection, that bond. So you will always have those friendships to a degree. And I think he kind of preserved friendship over the game at that point, which I was a bit like,
I think he, again, the decision that he makes later after the immunity challenge, which Lawrence wins, by the way, I think I don't know how people are going to take it, especially if Lawrence is at the end. And we'll get to there soon. But the immunity challenge was a ropes obstacle course. Basically, people are eliminated each round based on how many make it through. And Lawrence ends up winning immunity. And I don't know. Was there anything else here that is worth discussing?
There was, I mean, first of all, just Leilani. Leilani in the ropes. Bless her. She could not get through the ropes. There was one part, though, in round 2 that I was very surprised no one clocked. And it was when Christopher was openly helping Matthew get to the other point. It was when it was because obviously Leilani, Pegleg, and Hannah were out in the first round. Because the one good thing I did enjoy about this, even though it was an obstacle course, it was elimination style. I did like that factor. I hope we see more of them moving forward, even in later seasons. But when it was round 2 and it was Christopher, Lawrence, Matthew, Nathan, and Tanuke, Lawrence had gone through, Christopher had gone through. We were still waiting for the third person. Christopher was openly telling Matthew how to do it. Do 2 big swings and then chuck it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I was kind of sat there. I was like, how did no one clock that Christopher was openly helping Matthew? Like, especially Tanuke that was right next to him. I was kind of sat there and I was like, but again, I feel like whether it was just too zoned in the challenge or whatnot, I mean, Leilani, Pegleg, and Hannah could have noticed. So yeah, the fact that no one kind of picked up on that, I was quite shocked with, because that was something I really noticed. I was like, Christopher is kind of openly helping Matthew, like, and if we all know anything about Christopher is going to do anything to get a strategic edge, whether that's socially or strategically. So when I saw that, I was like, no one else going to clock this?
Yeah, I mean, people may have clocked it, but may not have understood the significance of it, especially because, like, again, when you go into the mindset of the challenge that it's okay, Christopher's going home. Like, even unless he wins immunity, Christopher's going home. And you see Christopher doing that, I feel like I would sort of be like, so desperate, you know? But when we see the context of Christopher is trying to get Matthew on his side for a bigger move, it's interesting to see. So I see that as a plus to Christopher's game as well, using every opportunity to reinforce to Matthew, I am with you, right? And I think that was a great risk to take. But Lawrence ends up winning the immunity challenge. They go back to Kalena. Nathan is confident that Chris is the one to go home. Pegleg tells Leilani to be careful being aligned with Tanuke and Nathan. This is where I almost thought.
Who was that again? Sorry?
Pegleg tells Leilani to be careful being aligned with Tanuke and Nathan. And this is where I thought the plan was going to go out the window. So this was interesting.
Yeah, because I feel like Peg was even being a bit too open with names, because he was obviously like the queen and her lapdog. And I was like, you've just openly referred to Nathan as the lapdog. I was like, this is where I kind of, again, I worry a bit for Peg, because I'm like, that's something that could get back to people. And then again, less people for you to work with. Yeah, it was interesting, but somehow still not the thing that made everyone know.
Yeah, it was a very interesting risk that Pegleg took in that moment. But again, like you just referenced, that someone just goes all in at the end and ends up telling Tanuke, which we'll talk about that conversation in a little bit. Matthew and Hannah discuss the relationship between Tanuke and Nathan. Again, more of the pros and cons of splitting them up or not. And Hannah says Tanuke is the head of their operation. So we could see that, I think, again, the blind side of Doug really sort of painted a target on Tanuke. And that's coming back in this episode. Yeah. So Lawrence's plan. Lawrence decides that he is going to he tells Hannah and Matthew that, okay, I'm going to vote for Pegleg instead of Tanuke. And he wants to, because he wants Tanuke to respect him when she's on the jury. He wants her vote if he makes it to the end. And that's what I kind of got from his strategy here. This is dangerous. This is a dangerous thing to do.
It was basically, he was openly jury managing. Is the way I took it. Like, basically, he was like, in a way, that's what, if anyone knows Survivor, when he was talking, it was almost like, okay, he basically wants to remain in her good graces by letting everyone else do the dirty work. And I was like,
I don't think this is a good look for him, because I don't think it's unless these players don't see it. That's one thing. But what we witnessed is that he basically said to Hannah and Matthew, like, you are so right. I don't want to upset Tanuke. And basically, also gave Pegleg's name. And and then he takes it another step and tells Tanuke that she is going to be receiving votes at tribal council. And for a second, I thought maybe they're going to turn this on Lawrence. But if I was Tanuke and I did end up, or if I was in this position and I was the one who ended up getting blindsided at tribal council, I would think a couple of things of Lawrence. I would say, okay, you knew that I was about to get blindsided. You did nothing to try to change it. And then not only that, you hid behind the vote of another player in order to not get blood on your hands. And I wouldn't vote for that player to win.
For me, it was very sloppy jury management because, again, all of those things you mentioned, basically, you knew what was going on. And instead of but basically, you said you didn't want to vote for me, but you just told me. But basically, you were going to sit there and be like, well, I'm still not going to vote for who you want to. You're basically just sealing, like basically saying, yeah, you're done, by the way. But as a sign of good faith, I'm not going to vote for you. I'm like, but you're not going to help her. And then he's telling her and essentially like screwing over his allies by basically exposing the plan. Because Tanuke's now gone into tribal knowing that her name is potentially out there getting votes. Because as we saw, she went straight to Peg and Hannah and was like, I'm just gauging. Lawrence has told me this. I just want to see how you guys are feeling. And I think this is where I did get a bit upset because she kind of took them at face value. Because unfortunately, I think similar to Doug, Tanuke had the blinders on for Christopher. Kind of similar to what Doug had last episode. Like, she had the blinders on. She was like, no, it's Chris, it's Chris, it's Chris. I've just got to stick faithful to my people. But yeah.
Do you think she could have changed the vote at this point?
Well, this is the thing. The fact that I feel like the only thing she had going for her more so than Doug was she had found out that she was a name, whereas Doug didn't. So the fact that she knew her name was there was a chance to kind of go to even them and be like, no, it's fine, it's fine. She'd sit there and go, so then why has Lawrence come to me and said that my name's out there? Why would Lawrence come and do that?
Oh, I see your point.
Yeah, it's one of those, okay, but so then why has Lawrence done that? As like, because again, they would all sit there and be like, well, he's a Calaton member. Like, it seems stupid. Exactly. So
I actually will say, to the credit of Hannah and Pegleg, I thought that they both played it off very well.
They did have good poker faces.
Tanuke, exactly. When they were like, no, you're not receiving a vote from us. You know, like I enjoyed that. And I thought that was actually really great of the two of them and how they approached that. But I was disappointed in Lawrence's game here. In the fact that if he said Tanuke, keeping Tanuke is good for my game, I want her here, I'm going to try to flip the votes. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I would have appreciated that gameplay more than what he did here, which was basically just hide. And we'll see if people identify what Lawrence is doing.
Because also at the end of the day, if he was to make it to the end and then try and take credit for the move, you'd sit there and go, well, you didn't vote for her. You openly knew about the plan. You knew about the plan, but you didn't participate in the plan. So how can you credit that as your move if you didn't participate in the plan?
That's a good point too.
That's where I feel like if he does make it to the end, again, his jury managing, that it almost appears like he's doing. I'm not saying that's because he didn't say that's what he was doing, but it comes across that way, obviously, from a Survivor fan's point of view.
And why make another enemy against you? Like, why write down Pegleg's name when there are like clearly other players that I mean, basically, you should have just voted against it. Unless watch this, Ollie. Lawrence is going to win, and it's all because of how he handled this. But I don't think I would give him a vote for how he handled this strategy. We go to tribal council. Only like one interesting thing kind of happens during the whole tribal council chat, which is Chris not really calling out, but like not saying by name, but kind of calling out Nathan and Tanuke. Basically, he says that players are experiencing a bit of a power trip. And then people ask him to elaborate on who exactly he means. And then I love when, he tells Nathan, like, the two of, we haven't spoken. And Nathan just goes right back to him with,
Yeah.
you've been playing a deceitful game. So
Yeah, do you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I'm so probably gonna hate me. But I was Team Nathan on that one, just only because of this reason. He he was calling people out for how they were treating them, but then at the end of the day, he was doing it to try and like call these people out. This is gonna sound so shady, but he didn't like it when Lee called him out. So why can he call other people?
I also
You can't in a tiny bit, not like majorly. I'm not saying they're the same thing. There is differences. I will say that there is differences, but I think in that moment he was, because it did come across in the edit, and I will say this, it came across in the edit like Christopher wanted to call people out. And to me, when I saw that, I was like, okay, there are people then going to be going to rebuttal, because as soon as Nathan rebutted, it was almost like it was almost kind of like Christopher was being like, yeah, but I have this opinion. I'm right to have this opinion. And it's kind of like, but also at the same time, Nathan's allowed to rebuttal. If you've kind of criticized his game, he's allowed to kind of give the reasons why. And to be fair, I do feel like Nathan was very honest. He was like, you've been deceitful. I don't trust you. Why should I? And I felt like that was very, like, yes,
Yeah.
it could be too comfortable. To the criticism of Nathan, it could come across as too comfortable. But in the same breath, I'm going to defend Nathan in the sense of Christopher wanted to call people out. But again, when Lee called people out, we saw how Christopher handled it. And again, Christopher's called people out. We saw how Nathan's handled it. And it's almost kind of, it's that light and day thing. I know it's kind of, it's again, two different situations, but it's similar in that sense for me anyway.
I agree. Watching this, I was sort of like, Nathan felt like the person who was way more confident in his points, whereas Christopher, I wonder if the notion he didn't say power trip, but he sort of alluded to people. What did he do? Do you remember?
He was kind of basically, he was basically saying people were on the holobobs.
Okay,
That people were only people are here just having a lovely holobobs, having a lovely holiday, and it's like, well, no, because in that sense, like Nathan has been playing the game, Tanuke has been playing the game, like it's the fact that they are going for you, and it's kind of, they are, unfortunately, to their detriment, to Tanuke and Nathan's detriment, they were openly going for him a bit too confidently.
Well, and it turns out this, doesn't really, we'll see how this affects Christopher's game moving forward, because Christopher stays and Tanuke ends up being the next person to go. What an incredible story arc with Tanuke these past two episodes. It was so exciting to watch. So I just want to, first of all, thank her, like, just for the strategy that she provided in these past two episodes. I know it did end up painting a target on her and her game. It did end up eventually getting her voted out, but like, it was so exciting to watch, and very logical of a plan to vote out Doug in the last episode as well. Like we were discussing, I still think maybe the order gotten mixed up, and maybe there was something that could have been done to keep Tanuke in the game a little bit longer, but very great to watch.
Yeah. I do just want to say, you said 2 episodes. I personally say 3, because I feel like we really saw her strategy as well in episode 10.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll
As a pairing, though, this was like, I could watch these 2 episodes as like a feature film of some sort, because
absolutely,
the through line was so fantastic. But you are right, and as we discussed on last week's episode as well, Tanuke has been one of our favorites this season. I know. Do you remember last week we had this whole discussion about, like, I was saying, like, oh, based off of the edit, Doug is going to win. And then Ollie was like, I really want Tanuke to win. And then I was like, oh yeah, Tanuke is definitely going to make it to the end. And now... So Ollie, this is a great transition to be like, okay, we have a handful of players left. Who are we looking at to win? So maybe we should do it this way. Who would you want to win, and who do you think will win?
Who I want to win? I'm going to say this now, actually. I'm going to go for Leilani. I would love to see Leilani win, because I feel like she's had such an underdog story. And I hope that she can credit herself to be like, no, do you know what? I have actually been playing longer than 24 days. And I hope that we kind of definitely see like a fire happen within these last few episodes. Who I think could win, I don't actually know. Because I feel like with Doug and Tanuke going, it has really opened the field. Because I know that, because again, here's the thing. Doug and Tanuke were basically the front runners, and they were playing arguably two of the strongest games, possibly the two strongest games. And unfortunately, kind of both of them, the funny thing for me was, I don't know if you know, like they both got out for the same reasons. They both kind of were too focused on one thing and not looking at everything else. But like for me, it opens the gates for anyone else to win now. They just have to have a strong enough case. It just depends on who can get there.
I know. I'm the same way. I need to see next week's episodes, and that's what's great is that I can't wait for Saturday and Sunday to watch the next two episodes to be able to see, okay, who's going to take the reins. I'm nervous that people are going to be hesitant to take the reins because we saw Tanuke get voted out for making a very large move. And now, who do I want to win? I agree. Leilani is on my list, but her and Nathan are sort of at the bottom now because they were left out of the blind side. So we'll see. But again, I think it's going to be very telling who kind of falls into the, I'm going to say, more of the strategy edit as the episodes go on.
Yes. My question is this: who do you think's in danger?
I say Nathan and Leilani. I do, because I mean, here's the thing. Again, it just goes back to they were left out of this blind side, so they are I would say they've become sort of the obvious ones. Christopher is still there, and who knows where Christopher actually lands within the within the people who voted for Tanuke. Who knows where Christopher actually lands in that group? So I don't know. Who do you think?
Okay, so it's not a cop out. I have reasons for everyone else. I feel like the only two that are safe, that are guaranteed safe, I think are actually Pegleg and Hannah.
Me too.
Yeah, because obviously, like right now, Leilani and Nathan have they are on the bottom. However, I feel like how they were exactly how Pegleg and Hannah felt in the previous episode. So I'm kind of sitting there going, they could. Obviously, Christopher is just a normal threat. I actually do think that Matthew could get a target because I feel like now he's kind of shown that not only that he will play the game, but it almost seems like from the preview, him and Christopher have linked up and people may have clocked it. Because I think this is where my worry for Matthew is. And this is actually what I was meant to say earlier. With the move that Matthew made, I don't think it was the wrong move to make. I don't think it was the wrong move, but I do think it was the wrong timing. I think it would have been more effective at Final 7.
To do this flip?
Yes, to do this flip on Tanuke. That's my own personal opinion.
I mean, that's the thing. I don't think this was really Matthew's move. I think it was Christopher's move.
Yeah.
And that's where the distinction kind of comes in. So I want to hear from our viewers as well. Leave us a comment on this video. Who do you think should win? And who do you think will win? So again, who do you want to win? And who do you think will actually end up with the title of sole survivor of Survivor UK? We are going to be back here next week to talk about episodes. I will be back next week to talk about episodes 13 and 14 of Survivor UK. Thank you all so much for joining. We always have so much fun talking with each of you in our live chat and seeing your comments after our videos have aired. Thank you all again, and we will see you next time.